What's up, everybody? Rob here. So I woke up this morning and I said to myself, I haven't had nearly enough drama or controversy in my life recently. I just need to make things as chaotic and as difficult as possible for myself. So I'm going to weigh in on a very controversial subject because, I'm a masochist like that. And for those who are wondering, yes, it's been a while since I put out anything. I work in a grocery store and it's been the holiday season, so basically things have been pretty much chaos over there and I've been extremely busy. I have an actual scripted history video that I'm going to be putting out. I'm about a third of the way done with it. It's going to be coming out probably sometime next week, but yes, I am working on stuff. And this is a completely unscripted, just stream of consciousness thing that's popping in my head, and I'm just going to go with it, and it's going to be rambling and incoherent, which I think you probably figured by now. So with as few edits as possible, here we go. So, about a week ago, Andrew Klavan over at the Daily Wire was doing a review of the Witcher series on Netflix, and I just want to say that I have not actually seen the Witcher series because that involves actually paying for Netflix, which I refuse to do because, I'm a cheap bastard and all that, hilarious that I'm actually going to pay for stuff. Any case, the only thing I know about the series is they're supposed to toss a coin to your Witcher, and I'm pretty sure that, everybody wants to play a bard now. Every D&D player now is like, I want to be bard. Any case, the controversy came up is when Andrew Klavan made the statement, and I could quote it exactly, but I don't feel like looking it up. But basically, he's saying that 100% of women will lose a sword fight against 100% of men, or something to that general effect. And I just want to point out that before we go any further, the fact that there's an absolute statement like that shows that this is obviously not true. Because as soon as you say 100% of some type of X do something, that's automatically wrong because all you do is find one exception and you just, defeated your own premise there. So in any event, yes, it is patently obvious that no, it's not true that 100% of women will lose a sword fight against 100% of men. There are women who are incredibly skilled combatants with swords and other medieval type weapons. I'm just going to say sword, but know that that means any type of, pre-industrial, pre-gunpowder weapon. They are very skilled with these things, and there are men out there who absolutely suck with them. So, yes, there you go. So that's right there. And even when it comes to the realms of unarmed combat, yeah, there are women out there who could beat up a very large number of men out there. For example, I can just say right now that if Ronda Rousey got a hold of my arm, she could probably just break it off. Amanda Nunes would absolutely beat me senseless, and Holly Holm would kick me so hard in the head I'd probably forget third grade. It was a terrible year anyway, but that's not the point. The point is that there are women out there who can beat up men and basically defeat them in physical confrontations. End of story. We can stop right there. And to go more deep analysis of these sorts of things, there have been other people have done videos on this. Matt Easton at Scholar Gladiatoria, Shadiversity, Blood and Iron Hema. London Longsword, they gave a series of tweets. I don't know if they did a video on it. I haven't checked yet. But yeah, they basically debunked this, and they went to so many different reasons as to why that, again, this is a patently absurd notion. And yeah, they can answer that question far better than I could. So instead of talking about how women could defeat men in physical combat, and by physical combat I mean like non-ranged weapons, no guns, no crossbows or anything like that. And I'm just going to keep up a picture of Siri here because, Siri's awesome, and anybody who says that Siri isn't awesome is a liar. Any case, instead of talking about that, because again, these other people can explain far better than I could, I'm going to really, I don't know how else to describe it. I'm going to be going into why I think there's some credulity when it comes to depictions of women in fiction, particularly fantasy and medieval type history, and them fighting with swords and spears and basically getting involved in physical combat, and why there's some degree of credulity there amongst our just society as a whole. So that's where the controversy should show up, and I'm sure I'm going to have a ton of people very mad at me, and I'm very sorry for this, but, I got to speak. Well, I just had this thing, it popped in my head, and I figured I'd share it with all of you, because, like I said, I haven't had nearly enough controversy on my channel or in life in general, because, yeah. I think the biggest issue here is the size disparity between men and women on average. Now, men, generally speaking, are larger and stronger than women are. Now, there are exceptions to this, of course. There are very large, very strong women, and there are very small and weak men. Myself, for example, I'm 5 feet 7 inches tall. I weigh 155 pounds, and I am reasonably strong for my size, but I'm really not setting any world records anytime soon. There are plenty of women out there that are much larger than I am, and basically just going around my day-to-day life, Finding women that are taller than I am is really not that difficult. Men also have a different distribution of muscle mass and body fat compared to women. For example, you have a man and a woman. They both are the relatively same size, same height, and they have the same weight. The man is going to have a higher proportion of that as muscle. Again, all other factors like same age and same general level of fitness and all that kind of stuff. But basically, overall, men are larger and stronger than women, just generally speaking. And exceptions notwithstanding, that is just basically the rule of thumb we have to follow with here. So because of this, generally speaking, I'm getting really tired of saying generally speaking. Just note when I make a statement like men are stronger than women, note that I'm aware that there are exceptions. I'm acknowledging this. It's tiresome. So in any case, the point I'm trying to make here is that men have a decided physical advantage over women in the realms of physical combat, armed or unarmed. There's really no getting around this. Now, deficiencies in physicality can be mitigated. For example, you can simply get stronger. You hit the weights or you swing a sword enough, you will get stronger. There's really no doubt about that either. So the gap can close up a bit there too. And also disparities in strength can be made up for with skill. For example, if you go to UFC 1, you have somebody like, Royce Gracie, who's not a particularly large individual, and he was tapping out people who were much, much stronger than, Ken Shamrock, who was, absolutely jacked, probably on some sort of steroids. And, basically technique can beat strength. However, I just want to point out that when it comes to combat like this, skill does beat strength, but there's absolutely nothing that says that the strong cannot be skilled as well. They're not mutually exclusive. Actually, that's the very reason why pretty much every combat sport has a weight class in it. So if there is a historical drama, say in a pre-gunpowder type of era, or say a fantasy show, again with featuring swords in basically medieval type combat or pre-gunpowder type combat, and the participants in these battles, say for example knights, say Game of Thrones here, or A Song of Ice and Fire if you want to go with the book series, they're trained individuals. Jaime Lannister's been training since as far as, he was like 7 or 8 years old, which is how you would do it historically for the Middle Ages. The Hound, the Mountain, all these other characters, they have been trained. They are very highly trained, highly skilled individuals who also have to be very strong. I mean, Jaime's really more known for his speed, if I recall correctly, but definitely the Clegane brothers were just very large, powerful individuals. Strongbor, a couple others. I just reread the books a little while ago, so it's stuck in my head. But in any case, they're very skilled individuals, and they're also physically strong as well. So skill and strength are not mutually exclusive. I guess that's my ultimate point here. So the ultimate question that I'm trying to answer here is, what is why is there a difficulty of the suspension of disbelief when it comes to female characters fighting their male counterparts? And it comes down to, that very simple fact that you can say, a very skilled female opponent can defeat a male opponent. Well, yes, absolutely, she can. The difficulty with the suspension of disbelief comes in is when she is fighting against equally trained or even more trained male opponents, and at that point, the natural disparities between men and women just basically become the primary issue here. It's not a matter of skill versus strength. It's a matter of a skilled individual against another skilled individual who also has a massive strength advantage. And strength is vitally important. It's one thing to hit your opponent. It's another thing to hit them with enough force to actually, say, do some damage, like cut off a limb with a sword or crush some bones with a mace or a warhammer, something like that. You have to actually hit with enough force to overcome armor, to overcome clothing that they might be wearing, and get into the skin and bones and, do some damage to their blood vessels and internal organs, basically, cause catastrophic damage. Hitting somebody, but it causes a minor, it doesn't either penetrate the armor or say it causes something that requires some stitches, versus hitting somebody a little bit slower, maybe not as, skillfully, but you hit the person with enough force to, shatter all the bones in their rib cage or crush their skull in or, take off an arm with one shot. Yeah, yes, strength does make a difference. Also, this type of combat relies very heavily on grappling. Sometimes you just get your opponent, you got to wrestle them to the ground, pin them on the ground, pull out a dagger and stab them in the face. Size and strength are pretty useful in situations like that. I did martial arts for many years, and throws can be done with a tremendous amount of skill and not a lot of strength. But in the heat of combat, you can't really rely on, definitely not do-overs. But you can't also rely on perfect form. You're going to have to sometimes just flat out muscle it, and being stronger does definitely help in this regard. Or more likely, if someone's trying to throw you, being physically as strong or stronger than them makes it even more difficult for them to, say, get you to the ground. Or if they're on top of you, you can throw them off. So raw physical strength is of profound importance on a battlefield or in combat of this type. So now that we have that out of the way, I just want to get to one final point here, and it's the idea that it's an argument that people have made when it comes up that, you have women in combat in, say, fantasy or a medieval type show, and people bring up that, that's unrealistic because, again, it didn't happen very often historically. It did happen historically, but not very often. And, they just bring it up like, why aren't more women portrayed in combat in these types of roles? And the argument that's often used is one of a suspension of disbelief. Basically, you're talking about a show where you got dragons and, people shooting fireballs at each other and all that stuff. Like, we'll accept that, but we won't accept, a woman picking up a sword and swinging it at somebody. We'll accept these very bizarre things, but, a woman in combat is somehow a bridge too far. And I think I have an answer for that. And it comes down to that we have no experience with any of these fantasy elements. For example, we have no experience with dragons or, griffins or any sort of magical creatures in our world, and we have no experience with magic in our world. Basically, it's up to the individual creator to explain how the world works. And as long as it's consistent, well, that's just how it works. So, for example, as far as magic goes, as long as it's consistent, if the magic only works on, alternate Tuesdays after a full moon, well, okay, that's how it works. You can't say, oh, that's not how magic actually works. It actually works like this. Well, no, that's how the creator set it up, so there you go. You can't also say, like, okay, a dragon. Dragons are always 100 feet long, and they always hoard gold and breathe fire. Well, in some franchises and some, books or movies or whatever, they don't. They're like, 3 feet long, and they shoot lasers out of their eyes, because you can't say that, oh, that's not a real dragon. Real dragons don't act like that. Well, in this work, they do. So basically, we just kind of have to take the author's word for it. And so that, therefore, we're as long as they're consistent, we're more likely to just suspend our disbelief with these things. Again, just as long as it's consistent within its own, the own rules that are set up within the particular work. As far as women fighting men in physical combat go, however, we do have experience with these sorts of things. Like, we know, if you've spent any time in, reality, you know that women are generally smaller and, not as strong as men, again, generally speaking. And so, therefore, having one fight against men is something we really don't, it's very difficult to suspend our disbelief with it because, well, we do have experience with that in our own world. We see with our own eyes that the vast majority of men are larger and stronger than the vast majority of women. And men are the ones, again, even within the logic of their own societies that are portrayed in these shows, the men are the ones out there doing the physical, training. They're doing the combat training, and women generally are the ones that aren't. And if that is the case, well, then obviously, yes, the men are going to be dominant. So if a female character picks up a sword and starts swinging it around and starts defeating her highly trained male opponents, who are larger and stronger than her, yeah, that's going to break our suspension of disbelief. And even though we're, say, in a setting where there are magical creatures and magic floating around and people shooting fireballs, basically the laws of reality are being bent or just sometimes flat out broken for these worlds. I'm going to have to assume, this is just me personally, whenever I see humans, and humans are the protagonists, or at least, they're present in virtually every fantasy story, I'm going to assume that those humans are just regular humans like us, and again, unless specifically stated to be otherwise, and again, only in the ways that are specifically stated otherwise. I know how humans work, I know how human biology works and physiology works, and I'm going to assume that it works the same for the people I'm seeing on screen or in the book, and again, unless I'm specifically told otherwise. So I have to use my real-world experience to fill in the gaps of what's not stated in the work. So for me, suspending disbelief is a simple matter of giving some sort of explanation as to why either women in this world or a specific woman in the world is capable of being as strong or as physically adept as her male counterparts. For example, in the book The God Emperor of Dune, one of the fish speakers, whose name I forgot, she was a secondary character, but she is capable of lifting I think it's like a 200-pound man with one hand. I don't remember. I've read it like several months ago, and it was a minor detail. But the point is that she is a very, very powerful individual, and this is explained by saying that she is the result of hundreds of years of selective breeding and possible genetic manipulation, and really that perfect explanation for me. Okay, she is the result of this very extensive breeding program that the God Emperor Leto was using, because he wanted his fish speaker soldiers to be as strong as possible and as big as possible. At least some of them were. And the result is you have this character who's very large, very strong, and yeah, okay, I don't question it. Like, oh, there's an explanation for why she's that big and that strong. Okay. That's all you need to do. So if you want to have, say, if any potential authors out there or creators or whatever, if you want to have your female soldiers fighting on par with your male soldiers in, completely even keel, like, there's no difference there. Just a simple, like, a couple throwaway lines here and there about, like, oh, they're either selectively bred, there's some sort of magical thing going on in the universe where, there's magic radiation or something like that that causes the men and women to be of equal strength, or just whatever. Come up with something creative. Just, you have to give me an explanation, because without the explanation, I'm going to default that these are just regular humans and that the regular biology of humans does apply, again, unless specifically stated to be otherwise. And as long as you stay consistent with this, I really just would consider that to be another, like, something like magic. Just, okay, just give me that explanation and I won't question any further. So that, at least it works for me. Maybe for other people, maybe their credulity needs to be tested a bit more. But, for me personally, just give me an explanation and I am fine with it. Really, I'm overall more worried about the quality of the writing, the characterization, the plotting, and, stuff like that. But, that's another story for another day. So there you go. I would love to see female protagonists, out there fighting with swords or spears or whatever it is. That in and of itself is, not an issue with me, but you just have to give an explanation as to why and how. That just, you gotta tell me these things. And there are plenty of female characters out there that I'm very, very, I'm a big fan of. For example, Siri, like you see right here. I'm also a fan of Brandon Sanderson pretty much makes a habit of writing female characters that are awesome like this too. So I have no problem. So I don't want to hear the sexism of like, oh, you just don't like to see women doing that kind of stuff. No, I have no problem seeing women doing cool stuff. You just have to give me an explanation for it. Otherwise, I'm just going to be defaulting back to my knowledge of biology. I'm going to be thinking, like, why is this woman the size of Keira Knightley, hacking apart somebody the size of the mountain? It's like, no. I mean, give me an explanation. I'm fine with it. No explanation, I'm going to be, I'm not going to be believing it. That's just me, though. So, to sum this all up, just to avoid any further accusations of sexism here, I just want to say, are there women out there who are capable of beating men with swords or in, physical combat? Yes, absolutely. Can 100% of men defeat 100% of women all the time in physical combat? No. Again, that's just an absurdity, and I have no problems with admitting it. That all being said, though, there are physical differences between men and women that do need to be taken into account when writing a piece of fiction. I'm not saying that this is good. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm simply saying it is what it is. That's how reality is, and we have to, we got to deal with it. So I think I made my point pretty clear here. In any case, I'm getting pretty tired, so I'm going to wrap things up. Please hit the like and subscribe button. More videos will be coming out whenever I get around to it. I do have a history-related video. It should be coming out next week sometime. I'm, making good progress on it. Sorry for the delays with any videos coming out. I just figured I'd give my opinion on this sort of thing. And, hope you enjoy this. Please leave a comment in the, down below in the comment section. And keep it civil. There's enough vitriol in the world out there. This is a sensitive topic, I'm sure, but let's, try to keep it as civil as possible. And, have a good day. Or don't have a good day. You're adults. You can have any kind of day you want. See you later.